In ancient Egypt, Pharaoh held the order of the cosmos in his hands, or so he thought. But by trying to preserve that order, he enslaved the very people who once saved his nation. Now, their God, Yahweh, demands their freedom, not just for liberty, but for worship. Pharaoh resists. Egypt depends on their labor. But what follows is no ordinary conflict. It's a battle of wills, a war between pride and righteousness. Will Egypt remain under the blessing given through Joseph, or become a land undone, cursed and deconstructed? Who responds in righteousness, Pharaoh or Yahweh? And is there evidence in the text? For those willing to dig deep, this is Exodus. Moses emerges from the wilderness and stands before Pharaoh with a single message: "Let my people go." Pharaoh, believed by his people to embody divine authority and uphold cosmic order, refuses the request made on behalf of his slave labor, forgetting that generations earlier these very people once saved Egypt from starvation. Each time Pharaoh rejects Moses' demand and, as the text says, hardens his heart, God delivers a warning in the form of a sign. Each sign escalates in severity, ultimately leading to the death of the firstborn son in every household. Yet the text also reveals a troubling motif. At times, God himself hardens Pharaoh's heart, seemingly so that he may bring judgment for Pharaoh's refusal to heed the warning. Many view this as unjust, or incompatible with the idea of a good and righteous God, if God is indeed the causal agent behind Pharaoh's defiance. This raises difficult theological questions that have echoed for centuries. Does God predetermine us for heaven or for hell? Does God harden human hearts so that he may punish them? And if so, is this good? A closer reading of the Exodus narrative reveals something more nuanced. At times God hardens Pharaoh's heart. At other times Pharaoh hardens his own heart. But beneath this apparent tension, something deeper is taking place, something that comes into focus once the historical and grammatical context is properly understood. In the Hebrew text, the language used does not always imply that Pharaoh's heart was hardened in the way we might assume. In several instances, a different word is used, kaved, a word that means heavy. Understanding why this word choice matters requires us to understand an ancient Egyptian concept known as ma'at.
Ma'at, the goddess of truth, balance, order, justice, and cosmic harmony. In Egypt, long before laws were written or kings rose to power, Ma'at was the force that shaped the universe, held society together, and gave meaning to life and death. To the Egyptians, Ma'at wasn't just a deity. She was the very principle that kept the world from falling into chaos. Every sunrise, every harvest, every royal decree depended on Ma'at being upheld. Even the Pharaoh, the most powerful person in the land, was ruled by Ma'at. His role was not to dominate, but to maintain balance, to act justly, to preserve the sacred harmony between the divine, the natural world, and the people of Egypt. And in death, Ma'at played her most critical role. When someone died, they faced a final test. In the hall of judgment, their heart was weighed against Ma'at's feather of truth. A heart that was light, pure and truthful, meant the soul had lived with honor and could enter the eternal paradise of the field of reeds. But a heart that was heavy, weighed down by lies, cruelty, or injustice, was devoured by Amit, and the soul was lost forever.
And with that understanding, the language of Exodus begins to speak in a new way. When the text tells us that Pharaoh's heart was kaved, aka heavy, it is not merely describing stubbornness, it is invoking a judgment Pharaoh himself would have understood. In Egyptian thought, a heavy heart was not a virtue. It was a sentence. Pharaoh believed he ruled by Ma'at. He believed he upheld order, justice, and balance. Yet each refusal to release the Hebrews added weight to his heart, layer upon layer of pride, cruelty, and self-deification. The very thing Pharaoh sought to preserve became the thing he violated. And Yahweh's role is no longer that of an arbitrary tyrant, but of a God who allows Pharaoh's chosen weight to reach its full measure. At times, Pharaoh makes his heart heavy. At other times, God confirms that weight, giving Pharaoh over to what he has already chosen. The plagues, then, are not random acts of destruction. They are decreations, a systematic unraveling of Egyptian order, exposing the falsehood of Pharaoh's claim to divine authority and the emptiness of a kingdom built on oppression. In the end, Pharaoh stands condemned not by Yahweh alone, but by his own standard. His heart is weighed and it is heavy, and this is where the story turns toward us. Exodus does not ask us to fear a God who hardens hearts at random. It warns us not to become people who make our hearts heavy. Because every act of injustice, every refusal to repent, every choice to cling to power or sin adds weight, until the heart can no longer respond. The lesson of Pharaoh is not that God desires destruction. It is that a heart weighed down by pride cannot enter freedom. So the question Exodus leaves us with is not merely, why did God harden Pharaoh's heart? It is this: what are we allowing to weigh ours down?